Herzlich willkommen zu SUPERGAIN TV. Heute habe ich einen ganz besonderen Gast. Ich bin total froh, dass ich ein Interview führen kann mit einem Dozenten, den ich, glaube ich, 3 verschiedene Kurse der mich begleitet hat an Berklee und wirklich ein toller Gitarrist ist, ein Wahnsinnsarrangeur, ein super Komponist und ein toller Lehrer. Scott Free, welcome. It's so nice that we get to talk. Yes, and you're our guest on our little YouTube show.
I'm honored. Thank you so much. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, so it's been a while. I mean, it's like 20 years since I was at Berklee.
You made one trip to Boston. I saw you with some other students that were there on Newberry Street. We actually have coffee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was 2010.
Okay.
2010, I was back with my wife, and we went to like see what's, because we were there like 4 years or something.
Yeah.
It's quite a long time.
Yeah.
And so it's an important place for us to keep checking out.
Yes.
But I wanted really to start off with, like, I really would like to talk about how Berklee also changed, because you've been there a while.
Yeah, quite a while.
I mean, you studied at Berklee, right? You started in
Down south.
Right.
Yeah, I transferred from a university, and I was thinking about this today because I wasn't sure but I had studied composition and theory down south for about a year and a half, and then I transferred to Berklee. Like a lot of people, they go somewhere else first, and then they say, I have to go to Berklee, which is the way I felt. I knew I wanted to go there, so I transferred in 1972.
So what was your motivation? Like, why did you think you have to go to Berklee?
Well, in those days, I remember one of the Grammy nominations was Quincy Jones's album, Walking in Space. Mm-hmm. And it had Jim Hall on guitar and, a lot of different studio musicians mixed in with that. People from the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Big Band played on the recording. And then I find out that Quincy Jones was a Berklee alum, and I knew I liked the East Coast kind of aesthetic for jazz, And so I felt drawn to go there. And I actually went right out of high school. My mother and I made a trip to the north, which is, long trip, New Orleans or thereabouts where I grew up on the Gulf Coast. It was a flight into New York and then a train to Boston. And I was alone in Boston when I went to look at it, and I loved it. I just wanted to be there. So it took me 2 years to get it together, but eventually I made it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yes. I mean, back there also it was like the thing to go, right? Where you, like, when it comes to jazz composition and arranging, like, it used to be like that was like kind of the nucleus, right?
Yes.
The arranging and composition department, right?
That's right. In fact, a lot of the people that came to Berklee came off the road from playing in bands, and they wanted to learn to write so they could make more of an impact, and so there was a lot of that. And and the jazz arranging and composition diploma was the thing that, like, John Scofield was in. That was the major that a lot of people were drawn to. And I went up in that major too, but it became a degree major, jazz composition. Yeah.
Right.
But actually I was traditional composition. What am I saying?
Okay.
Because the only degree that you could get was a composition degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So no like performance or guitar degree back then?
Well, they had that too. Yeah. They had a performance degree. They call it applied performance, and it was classical and jazz.
Okay.
The composition was classical and jazz, but the portfolio you had to put together was all classical.
I see.
Yeah. So your writing had to be like a symphonic piece, a sonata. It was a lot of writing. Yeah.
So that I didn't know that. I thought it was like real, like a jazz program back then, but it has still a lot of traditional classic.
Yeah. You got your degree in classical composition, but there were a lot of jazz teachers there as well. So you were getting both.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're also a guitar player.
I am, yeah.
So that's, of course, like, you've also had guitar lessons.
That's why I wanted to really go to Berklee more than anything, was because of the guitar. They had a major in electric guitar.
Yes, which was rare back then.
Right, that's right, yeah. It was about the only school. I think you could play electric guitar at North Texas State, which was another, our friend went there. I'm trying to remember her name, but she was at that cafe. But anyway, the Veronica. She went to, she made a great roommate. She was. she made a very funny comment about the way people listen to jazz in North Texas. They're really like gung ho, like it's like a football game or something. Whereas in Boston, everyone's kind of quiet.
That's so fun.
Yeah, but and I wanted to play guitar, but my parents said if you're going to go to college for music, you're going to get a degree, and so I had to go along with that. And I wound up majoring in composition. The university I went to down south didn't have a guitar teacher. Didn't have a major in guitar. I studied the cello there.
Oh, you did?
And yeah, that's another sort of interesting thing that followed me along to Boston when I came. But I was, playing the guitar in the jazz lab band, they called it back then. So I got to play and read and play with good musicians. And it was a really good university for that. I mean, actually, the fellow that was my teacher there was quoted in Duke Ellington's Music is My Mistress. He was one of the people that he mentioned as an educator that was doing good things.
Oh, wow.
His name was Raoul Jerome. But anyway.
I see.
Yeah. So when I came to Boston, I wanted to play guitar, but it turned out because I played the cello that I got into a big concert rehearsal with Gary Burton and John Schofield. All these people were in the band. So it was really fun because, I was a first-year student, but I was getting to play cello, which was not the instrument I preferred, with like some of the really good players that were there.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it was fun.
So John Schofield was a student back then?
He was. Yeah, he was just about to graduate.
I see. Yeah.
And we talked, we would see each other in the coffee shop and everything. And it was very easy going.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah. So you must have seen like a lot of guitar students back then, because that was the place to go to Berklee, right? Because you can major in guitar, and everybody went there to get a degree in guitar, right? Was that the case?
That's the case, yeah. A lot of people did, and it was the biggest department, student-wise. There were 20 faculty. When I joined the faculty at Berklee, the guitar department had close to 20 faculty, and I was just one of, the people that sort of on the younger side there, but I was interested in teaching other subjects too. So that's how I kind of moved into the area of composition, because it was what I studied in college. And,
of course,
my principal.
But who were your teachers in guitar back then?
Well, I was studying with Mick from pretty much the beginning, because I had gotten his name from Walt Namath, who was playing in Buddy Rich's band.
Okay.
As someone that would be good to study with in Boston. And I called Mick, and he said, I'm not taking any students. And he said, who gave you my number? Or who told you to call me? I said, Walt Namath. And he said, why don't you come on Wednesday at 9 a.m.? Okay. So I felt like whatever I went through to get to that point of getting that reference was worth, the suffering. I was actually running outdoors in the rain and trying to find this concert in Washington, D.C. But
wow.
Anyway, so...
And how was that? Like, I was studying with Mick back then. Like, was he also... I experienced it, like he's a real scientist about guitar. That's my what I was so enamored with how he organizes things.
Yes, yeah.
But was he back then? Like, was it the same back then?
Well, back then he had pieces that he taught, that he gave you, that were like teaching pieces that you had to play. So you'd play solo pieces of his some of the time. And then you did the one string exercises. He started with that, and he talked a lot about improvisation in relation to developing motives. But he hadn't really developed any of the stuff in the Mr. Goodcourt book came later. And part of that was because he admired Bill Levitt, because Bill Levitt put together a very comprehensive book on music. And he thought, well, what's not in there that I can add? And he did all these other things that were, well, they were really interesting, obviously, and I think his influence as a player and a teacher was so massive that, it really basically, over a long course of time, he always had a full group of students studying with him. In fact, the fellow that we studied with Pat Metheny too. But Mick was our teacher outside of school.
I see. So, right, Pat Metheny was teaching at that time, right?
He started teaching about my fifth semester. Wow. So it was, let me see, it was probably in the fall of 73 or the early 74.
Okay. Yeah. And so he was, you studied with Metheny there?
I did.
Oh, yes. Yeah. How was that?
It was really different. And again, Mick had already done stuff to get you away from some of the position playing that was so prevalent in Bill Levitt's book. And then when Pat came along, he was completely about playing up and down the neck and getting so you could get through changes and have a good solid feel. I mean, he was very demanding, but it was a different thing to study with him.
As he was really young, right?
He was young. He was younger than me. Yeah, it was, which is fine. I mean, there was no question that he knew a lot of stuff that we needed to know. And yeah, he was a really fine teacher. Yeah.
Because I did you hear about this? There's this bootleg recording of a lesson with him. Have you ever heard about?
No.
It's amazing, yeah. And it's like half of it is about time, yeah, and about practicing with a metronome,
right?
And he's really hard on that poor student.
Yeah, it might have been me.
Probably was. Yeah, it's on some airport. You hear like planes landing,
yeah,
and it's probably
he was really demanding in that way. But it was a great thing. I mean, because it really made you want to be able to do the things that he was. And Mick was the same way, but he had a more of a spiritual approach to everything. So it wasn't really, he was working with people very individually, which is great too. And I did workshops with Mick. I don't know if you ever had one of those where there were more than one guitar player.
No, I had a guitar lab with him.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yes.
The predecessor of that was in his own home when he taught.
He
did. Yeah. He did workshops. Yeah. And a lot of the people when he passed, if you looked on his, the tribute to him, there were a lot of remarks about things that, like one person who he said, put the guitar down and go for a walk. And then when he came back from the walk, he said, now play what you saw. It's like, very experiential. You didn't know what you were going to get with Mick. Whereas with Pat, it was pretty much definitely going to be nose to the grindstone.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, that's interesting. Yeah. So Pat was really that like organized, and he had specific topics that were really important to him back then.
Yeah, those things that you talked about, playing with the metronome on a lot of times on 2 and 4, being able to really outline the harmony first to a song so that you've got that, and you can do it musically, not just like playing arpeggios, but you're actually creating melodies. And then he also taught through his own music. So he would have us learn his melodies and learn to play them with him. And, it was really great. I mean,
that's so interesting.
But he wasn't my first guitar teacher. You asked me who I studied with. I studied with a guy named Ronnie Bill.
Okay.
Who was a sweet, very fun musician. And he played banjo too with like a Dixieland band. So I went to see him play at one of the local hotels. And then I moved to Mark French, I think. And then I got Mick. And Mick Mick the whole time. I got Pat Metheny in my 5th semester. Got mixed up there for a minute. But the whole time I was studying with Mick, but I studied with Pat as soon as I could. Yeah. And you had to be finished with certain things in order to get with him. Because Bill Levitt didn't want people just passing through his stuff to get to something different. He wanted them to really have processed it.
Yeah, that was the same thing with getting to study with Mick when I was there.
Oh, yeah.
You can't just, go there. You have to kind of do certain things. And that was nice. But then, of course, you started teaching there, like quite soon after that, right? Or
I did, yeah. In fact, Pat asked me to substitute teach for him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Bill Levitt wasn't too happy about substitute teachers or anything like that. So it was a little bit of a difficult moment. And, I've told that to people before, so it's not a secret, but Pat was his career was taking off. And he's like a lot of people who teach at Berklee, they start to get a career going and they kind of have to leave for a time. And so he was away and then he came back. And during the time he was away, I studied with Dave Samuels, the Vibes player.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Who was really a great guy too. He's passed away recently.
I met him also.
You did?
Yeah, I was in one of his ensembles.
Oh, you were?
I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Spiral Gyra. And I read his name on Pat Metheny records, where he played cymbals, I think. He played cymbals.
Yeah, well, he was in Pat's, when Pat came, that's an interesting thing, because when Pat came to Boston, he wasn't with Gary Burton yet. And he put together a band that had the same configuration as, Gary had first John Scofield for a little bit, then he had Mick Goodrick on guitar, and he had Steve Swallow and Bob Moses. And Pat got Dave Samuels on vibes. And he got Barry Smith on bass and Gary Chafee on drums. So he had the same he was competing.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's so interesting.
Yeah. And, it sort of showed you that Pat was not afraid to go up against anybody.
Wow.
And then the next thing you know, he was invited to play in the... And he was brought there by Gary. I mean, Gary knew that Pat was a needed person in the Berklee lineup,
Wow. That's so interesting. So many things already that I didn't know.
No, well, amazing. Well, you knew a lot, let me tell you. And one of the great things that I got to do was teach some wonderful students. And I mean, I'm very much, I feel fortunate to have been there when I was. I did start young, and I think some of the people that I taught have really done great things. And that to me, it's like, means the world to me.
Yeah, so I was, I very clearly remember that my first class with you was Jazz Counterpoint 1.
Uh-huh.
And that was so great, really. I had so much fun. I learned so much in that class.
Right. Yeah.
Really. I mean, basically when I went there, I didn't study music before. I played a lot. I played in bands a lot.
Yeah.
But I was not like, I never, and I took some harmony classes. I thought I know something, but I didn't.
No,
I figured out I did. And that was so interesting. Like in jazz context, how two voices move and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was really great. So I can totally thank you for all the things that I learned there, really.
I'm very happy. I mean, again, you stand out in my mind because of the things you presented, even like in my jazz class. You came with analysis of Maria Schneider's work and all kinds of great things. So, it was a great place to work. And to see it change the way it did. You came in 2000.
I came in 2002.
Yeah.
That was my first semester.
And Roger Brown became the president probably a couple of years later, right?
Right. I was the last one to graduate when Lee Berg was still there.
Yeah, okay.
And Gary Burton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I think that was 2004 was my graduation there. And but it's such a great place. And it's interesting how it's like developed, but it's great that Mick Goodrich, he played a big role, like in the beginning, like right at the beginning, but from the 70s on until like in the 2000.
Well, as of the 2000, yeah. And he left Berklee for a while because it just wasn't working out for him, and then he taught at New England Conservatory for a little while, and then he came back to Berklee.
Yeah, right.
Remember, he used to ride his bike, and when we were. And he was an eccentric a little bit, but he loved to walk and he loved to ride a bike, and he didn't really love flying or driving cars or anything like that. But he came up to me once on the bike and we was talking about Berklee and everything, and we stayed friends. I actually was a housemate of his for a little while.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He just, when he came back to Berklee, I felt like it was a really good thing for the school, because he was bringing something that was needed.
But now we really have to talk about, the jazz composition department and what you like the courses you taught there, and I mean the jazz composition department is basically, as you said, the nucleus of everything, right? So it's so many things got developed there to educate people writing arrangements and composing music in a jazz style, right?
Right. It started, really, with, Larry Burke, who was Lee's father, had studied the Schillinger system and had adapted some of those concepts into arranging. And the college was really just a school, Berklee School of Music, for a long time. In fact, a lot of people, if you ever hear them on television or the radio, the Berklee School of Music, it's still called that, but it became a college. And that's part of why it had to have a classical composition major, because accreditation in the United States is based on certain similarities between colleges. So if you want to be in that group of colleges that offers a degree in composition, it needs to cover certain curricular things, And the jazz part of it was really in the mid 80s is when it started to become its own degree major. So it was 15 years or so before you came. And the head of the department was Ken Polig. He was there when you were there. And before him, really, Ted Pease was, before there was a jazz composition department, Ted Pease was in charge of the writing part of Berklee's curriculum.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have him ever?
Yes,
Yeah.
I had him in jazz composition 1, and there was this kind of listening class or a history class, which was amazing. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I loved that class so much because I was sitting there and I was learning so much about different kinds of music that and he also brought up like really modern hip things.
Oh yeah,
didn't damn it, you know,
he's on it. Yeah,
you know,
that's Ted Pease.
That's
it's
amazing.
funny. But I don't know if you, I don't know if the big band book was out when you were.
It was just being written as
it was. Yeah, we all had the assignment to write an arrangement for the book in the back, and one person got Duke Ellington, one person got Count Basie, one person got Thad Jones, or and Ted could have written all of them. He was literally the person who just had every style. He knew everything that goes in them, and he did Bill Holman, contrapuntist, and he did a great job on that. But he was so much fun to work with, and I got to play on a lot of his pieces and everything. And then there was Herb Pomeroy that we can't really put after anyone because he was the leader of our department, even though he was never the chair.
Okay.
And his courses were the most sought after courses. And eventually Greg Hopkins kind of took the mantle of Herb Pomeroy. And and Greg did a great job. He had that big band to write for all those years. Now it's more of a project band thing. It's not the same performing band. But, I mean, it was a fantastic department. We had some women. Early on, Barbara London was in there. And then Einen Serto is a more recent faculty member. She's now the assistant chair. I don't know if you knew that or not. Did you see anybody from...
Actually not, because it's so hard to get in there now.
Yeah, I know. He said, "Can we come to Boston?" I don't think they'll let me into. I mean, they would let me into Berklee, but it's like just actually use the space and something like that. It's it was complicated. So, but a lot of great people. I mean, Bob Pilkington is still there, but I think he's getting close to retirement. And Jackson Schultz, did you have Jackson?
I had Jackson for course scale.
Yeah.
And this was also an amazing course. I mean, I can't stop talking. How much I learned from that class. Yeah, it was. I remember it was a summer semester I took, and it was chord scales. What's the whole?
Well, voicings derived from chord scales. Yeah, it's chord scales and arranging.
Right,
or voicings derived from chord scales.
I mean, I learned so many things about how to put together everything, how it works, and what to do, what not to do. It's a great book, really.
Yeah,
that book came out when I.
Oh, it did. Yeah, a lot of us were involved in, I was definitely involved in the choice of materials that would go in there. In fact, I had one of my teachers as an arranging student at Berklee was Jackson Stock, who was a trombone player from the West Coast. And Jackson had this course that he taught in arranging where he was really talking about the different registers of instruments. And I said, we need to have that for everybody so they can read it because, when you're listening to a band, you're not really sure which instrument's playing in which register, until you start to be aware of what they sound like in those registers. And that's what Jackson's, he would have us listen to a piece and really listen to how it's orchestrated and get into the what's the register of that instrument and what's it like versus the high register, say it's the middle. So he was just a super teacher. And part of what I did with that, I made sure that there was stuff about voicing and force, and I made sure there was stuff about the orchestrational registration of instruments and all those things, So it was really fun to see it come to that, because in the old days, and this is something, again, I don't know if any of the people watching go back to my era, the books when we first used to teach were just kind of the caption, and then a little sentence, and then an example in music. And you had to write stuff in there for it to make any real sense to the students. And I remember one class I had where we had people from Switzerland and Germany and Japan. And, literally I'm passing the notes as I'm teaching. I'm passing the notes around. There's like, who's the fastest at writing? And it would just go through the ruler. I mean, it was early. It was, as my kids used to say, boy, Dad, you come from the olden days, but it felt like that, it was not.
But I think the great thing was that a lot of people there then figured out, okay, we have to develop something.
Yes.
We have to develop material which is kind of concise and and really helpful to people. I remember you probably know Donnie Nolan.
Oh, yeah. I know Donnie well, yeah.
Donnie Nolan had a big band class, and the material is like one folder.
Yeah.
And I also took studio orchestra with him.
Oh, you did? Oh,
It was like 2 folders for one semester, and he passed out materials, and it was like a couple of books in itself.
Yeah.
So, but that's so amazing. So many people took the time and really made the effort to, we need something to really explain this, because also there are not so many places I think you can go to figure that out or to learn.
At that time, there were not. I mean, there are definitely a lot of people have come along and kind of done similar things to what we had as a curriculum. But you're right about one thing, that, you know, it was very individualized when I first started teaching there, because everybody had to come up with their own examples too, you know. And then at a certain point, they wanted to get it so that the course description fit very much what the materials were like in the chapter order, and everything like that was kind of nailed down. And it was good that it was, because like you said, it made it so it was consistent, you know. It made it much stronger.
Yes, because when I sorry to interrupt you, but when I came there, I thought, I know a little bit about harmony, and I tested into harmony too. And I was really embarrassed. I thought I'm coming down, but it was so great to go through that program, because now I feel like, I really understand this, and I can, pretty much go in any musical situation almost. Yeah. I mean, at least the ones I get to play.
Yes.
And I know what's going on.
Right.
So first, when you study this and you study this, and it's all kind of, different sources, but it's not a concise system. So I think the harmony program in itself is, I thought, really, really good.
Yes.
And so when I finished that, I really felt confident that I can, handle stuff.
Yes. It's had a really good training and you took it seriously. I mean, that's the other thing, is you worked hard and you were already playing a lot. I think when I went to Berklee, I had studied classical, harmony, and I don't know if you took any, but like learning the voice lead and the style of Bach and all that was what most of the courses were teaching, the common practice of voice leading. And that was useful, but it was a very different thing the way Berklee approached harmony. And it was like, oh yeah, this makes sense because it relates to all the music that is on the contemporary,
right,
docket for what's being played and everything. So really, and that's part of what drove it. In fact, I'll just tell you one quick little aside, that another time that I was able to work with Ted Pease and Larry Monroe, who was the head of the performance division for a while, we were creating the curriculum for a summer program, and it was really designed for kids to come in from high school or early college and just do a short program. And I transcribed the entire performance of Pat Metheny's American Garage. And, everybody in the room, we all decided we were going to develop our curriculum based on some new thing, So, wow. Yeah, so it was fun because, we were finding material that everybody was listening to and that they knew about, and we were saying, here's what's going on.
Wow.
This is how it works. So it made the teaching of harmony more relevant to the...
I mean, that's so important that you start with something that, is familiar, and because everybody, I remember the first harmony books I read in Germany.
Yeah.
I was like, but nobody told you have to listen to this.
It's just a theory.
It doesn't do anything if you just read it,
Yeah.
Now the altered scale. Yeah, if you don't know what it sounds like and how it's used, and I think that's why I also started to teach like the other way around. Like you have to listen first,
right?
Or you have to deal with stuff that's in the real world and then explain it,
right?
And it doesn't make too much sense to explain it, and then after that, you kind of just be lucky to find something that uses it.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think Ted Pease's jazz composition book, which again, I was involved when he was writing that, again, just the way he put it together, jazz music theory and practice, because it's really, it's as much about what people are really doing as it is about any theory of what's going on in the music, and his impact, with Donnie Nolan and with a lot of other arranging teachers. I mean, Ted was kind of at the forefront of doing transcription and making sure that we had great materials to share with our students, which makes a huge difference too, because you're not just, listening to something and then the listening part is super important. And I actually like teaching counterpoint that way. I used to come into my counterpoint classes and put on something I liked with them and say, here's what the melody looks like. What's that other voice doing? So they can start thinking, what's going on here? I loved all that about it. And, I miss it, to be honest. I mean, I retired now for a couple of years, and I do miss hanging out. I'm going to get to see Bob Pilkington and other people. Mm-hmm. And they were here. I had a birthday party last year, I think. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
And Greg Hopkins and Ken.
Wow, nice. Spotted.
Yeah, and Bob. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the people that we were influenced by were, they were people that learned on the job.
Yes.
And that's the thing is, if you look at like Thad Jones, now he did study. I mean, Thad Jones was one of three brothers, right? Hank Jones, Elvin Jones, and Thad. And Thad studied arranging and composition, and he basically, did so much. Like, it was on Herbie Hancock's album "Speak Like a Child," and he helped him with arranging, and the man was really an essential musician. But he wasn't worried about theory as much as he was getting that sound from the band, and that's where you really get into the appreciation of the aesthetic and how hard people work to get that, and playing with them every night, it's like, that's what we all want to do really, is play with the same band all the time and get to write for it, right?
Yes. Well, man, times have changed. That's why I think, sometimes the life in the 60s where you play every night from 8 to 4 or something, it just doesn't happen anymore.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. I mean, and that's sad. I mean, I think if we go down that road, we're going to, Steve Lukather, the guitar player did you read that thing he wrote? Oh my God. It's very much an essay on what's wrong with the music business.
Yeah.
And which, is.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
That's a different story.
It is. Wayne Shorter, I'll tell you one quick one that I saw Wayne at a conference where he was on a panel, and he was talking about music and how, he had to protect for himself what he wanted to do artistically, and he was talking about how a lot of times the music industry and the record companies wanted you to be successful and do the same thing, and blues in the abstract truth twice, it's the second version. And it's like, it's time to move on,
Right.
It's like, I have other things. And Miles was so great at that. Miles Davis just kept in motion.
Right.
His career he didn't want to repeat much,
Right.
He had to go on and do the next creative thing. So that's the other part of these, we're not in a society where there's that much support for that, but it's still important, still essential.
Totally. And we can kind of just see those examples like Miles and say like, he was the example for that, right? So you can just, be inspired by that.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's
And
great.
when you teach guitar students, I was just thinking, I've got a couple of young students.
Oh, yeah.
And one older one. And one of the young students was talking to me about something he was watching on YouTube, and it was really, I watched it, and it was, fiery kind of playing, and he could play some of it.
Oh, wow.
I was very proud because he had gotten it. A lot of kids are getting things off the YouTube and the internet now that were not happening when we were young. When I was young, you're still young.
Me too. There was no YouTube. But
No, I know. Yeah,
started there. But still, that's why we do this.
yeah.
Because I think YouTube can be a really great thing.
Absolutely.
Because you can get so many things out of it. You can see so many things. Now, I think the great thing is you can see stuff, how people play.
Right.
Because, listening is one thing, but sometimes you really have to see how they do it. Because how does he play this?
As a matter of fact, like when I was young, I wanted to play music in bands, and I'd studied guitar, as I was telling your daughter earlier, when I was 5 and a half. And I played some pieces that I learned, but I used to go to dances on Saturday nights, Friday nights, Saturday nights, and I would just plant myself in front of the band and watch the guitar player's fingers.
Oh, really?
I'd go home and practice,
That was YouTube back then, right?
Well, that was YouTube, yeah. And it's funny because Forrest Silver mentioned that. He was saying when he was a kid, he used to listen to the radio, and he would be on the second floor listening to the radio in his bedroom, but that piano was on the first floor. And he would hear something, And then he would go downstairs and try to find it on the piano without. So, that's part of the beauty of music too. That one-to-one, you hear something, you want to know what it is.
And very good, very good. So now you retired for like 2 years?
Almost 2. Yeah, 2 years.
Wow. So you get time to like
practice.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. In fact, when I first was really frustrated with being retired, I thought, if I was grading papers right now, I'd be wanting to practice. And I don't have to grade papers, so I'm going to practice. So I went through a lot of things that I'd already played. I studied some of Mick's books again. I went through some of them. I used some of them for composition too. I was going to give you a CD of something I did that used some of his concepts.
Oh, really?
From the
Almanac.
Mr. Goodcord, the Almanac for voice leading the year 2001 and beyond.
We are beyond already.
Yeah, we are well beyond. Yeah, but but he was an inspiration to me, and I basically sort of kept that, as like a navigational tool in my life. So I've gone back a lot of the music. I mean, I was sitting in the chair over there, talking to Mick when he was not so well.
Oh, wow.
Getting older, and it was an important connection for me from the beginning, and I want to try to continue to process as much as I can about those things. And
great.
Still writing some too.
Yeah. Are you still writing for orchestra or for big band?
I haven't written anything for big band lately, but I've got I have a website. Also, I've had some people play some of my music elsewhere, so that's fun.
Nice.
Yeah, I was going to give you a couple of recordings just so you can have some.
Yes, and we have to put some links in the description so people can find your music and listen to it, because I saw a lot of like what was the Fall
Together
concert. Of course, yes, I was there, and I heard lots of music.
They created an archive.
Oh, they did?
Yes, they did, yeah. And so there's an archive that has a lot of those concerts.
Oh, nice.
And I think, I don't know what they're going to do with it, but I can say I've gone to look at it, and they've done a good job of organizing so far. I mean, Bob Pilkington was one of the 3 founding people on that, and he's done a lot of work, excellent work on that. And so
nice.
Anyway, I will definitely give you the links. And
oh, yes,
I'm thrilled to be here. I wish I spoke German better. I did study German, and I studied it on my own. But we had this I was listening to it again today. I love this guy. His name is Michel Thomas.
Okay.
Thomas, yeah. And he talks about the changing in vowels and things like that. So you can see the connection between English and German.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's really a cool book. Yeah. And it's a whole approach to it that's very different than I've studied a lot of different languages in order to go there and talk with, to whatever extent I could,
Your Korean is also pretty good.
Oh, that's it. Apparently, according to President Brown. Yeah, I loved it. And, the other great thing is I've gotten to travel. I've gotten to go to Korea, Japan, and see students that I knew that are out working in music like you are. That's the most rewarding thing in my life, really, is the fact that other people are following and doing things that they want to do with the material they've gotten. I was getting into the modes of limited transposition, Olivier Messiaen, and I went to France back in the year that he would have turned 100.
Oh, really?
And went to the cathedral where he had played the organ for 60-something years, and those concepts are good. I mean, I studied music theory seriously, and then I started to realize that just a little thing like that, if you add that into your vocabulary, can give you a whole new set of things to consider. So it's pretty cool. That is, and his books are informative. They're called The Technique of My Musical Language. And what else? There's one is The Technique, and they're real examples too. So he'll give you the exact thing that he's using, and then he'll show you a piece and how it works. I
mean, that's anyway a great way to maybe conclude this. If you learn just one thing, right, and use it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically then you're done studying.
Right.
That's what I try to tell my students in our little guitar academy.
Yeah.
Everybody's like overwhelmed with things.
Yeah.
Always
Much information.
Yeah. But if you just check out, that's what I also got from Bruce Bartlett. He turned me on to an interview by Bill Evans, and it's called The Universal Mind of Bill Evans.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah.
And he's talking about, like in one part, he's talking about, when he's practicing, he's just getting to one point and really, studying this one little thing and trying to develop it. And that's it, and then you really learn something, right? Except instead of, putting together 20 or 30 things and then the sound is the same. Yeah. Saturday night,
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great interview. That was his brother that did the interview. Yeah. With him. And, that's cool. Well,
Hey, Scott,
I'm very proud and happy to be here, Michael. And thank you for coming to the United States again. I want to go to Germany again.
Oh, we go back and forth. All
right, good.
Thank you so much for being hier.
My pleasure.
Ich glaube, das war ein super Interview, oder? Wirklich fantastisch. Es war so gut, diese Geschichte zu hören. Schaut nächste Woche wieder rein. Es gibt bestimmt wieder was Spannendes. Bis dahin, alles Gute. And thank you so much, Scott.
Okay. My pleasure. Bitteschön.